all on you. All right. All right, we'll take your number out. Stand up and state your name and question.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Thank you for being here. My name is Now, I know that the General Assembly passed the law forbidding municipalities from choosing to do monuments. And we know that the General Assembly has a tendency to be very petty towards municipalities who don't kind of get in the knee and do what the General Assembly said. But if, let's say, Rocky Mount chooses to remove the statue, even in spite of the General Assembly, what enforcement mechanisms does that statue actually have? Would they actually force a lawsuit and get an injunction for them to put the statue back up?
Well, they can try and enforce state law, but I think, as you know, too, it seems to me it's a little more complicated now because when they pass this statute, I think they always assume they're going to have a Republican government. Now the matter under the statute goes to this historical commission, whatever it's called, and that's not just Republicans now. Now we got a Democratic governor, so there's some chance that you could get relief against the statutory ban in the commission. The first thing to do is ask for it. Get your city folk to ask for it, just like we ought to be asking for it in Chapel Hill. Demand, and it seems to me there's always the possibility on that front of a lawsuit in connection with that statutory ban. Complicated, not an easy one, but they're trying, as you know, they're trumping all over municipal rights all over North Carolina. Like every tyrant, they have this view. You can have just as much power as you want so long as when you use it, you do exactly what I would do. If you don't, then we're going to overturn it. We're going to take away your authority, like they've been doing in Charlotte, they've been doing in Wake County, they've been doing in Greensboro, they've tried to do in Ashland as well. So I think there's more room than there would have been before this election through the statutory process, and there's the possibility of challenging the statutory. And I can say, as someone who's just had the Civil Rights Center at UNC, that I worked with Chancellor Chambers to get started, closed. Rocky Mount moves, you can expect the legislature to punish Rocky Mount in some way because they're tyrants. And they don't believe people who aren't like them are part of the constituency. And I wish that wasn't the battle we had. I wish it wasn't as bad as it is. I wish it wasn't really a fight for our own decency, but it doesn't do any good to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. We got a battle in North Carolina for our very decency as a people. And we ain't won it yet.
So just to add what Gene said, I have been consulted, let's put it that way. They arrested 4 or 5 people in Durham after they tore that statue down. As for the criminal, they're going to be charged with defacing public property or something. And our advice to them is to ask for jury trials, get to the district court, go to the Superior Court, get a jury trial, and have my brother and various historians come in and do a history lesson at a jury trial for the next 2 or 3 weeks in Durham Superior Court. In other words, that's called jujitsu. That's they come at you, you say, okay. And that's essentially what we did with the 1,045 people that got arrested over in the General Assembly on Moral Mondays, was just force them first to have district trials, and then we started appealing it, and that's when they gave up and said they were violating our First Amendment rights. So if we build a movement, I always think of civil rights lawyering as there's 2 aspects of it, and we are beginning to see the second aspect. The first aspect is to make sure you have the First Amendment rights to organize and speak out. And we were in a quiescent period in the movement, let's face it, from after they killed Dr. King saying, and then busted the Panthers and everything, I always say it's about 74, 75, until Obama gets elected, really, to 2005, 2006, and that there was certainly a beginning of a movement saying when we started up again here. We had to win the right get up and raise hell. That's the first step. And then the second step is called movement building. That's what really creative civil rights lawyering is. And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on. So,
Let me just add one thing, just in connection with that. We shouldn't give up on the possibility that the governor could need some help here. For the reasons I said, you've got local folks who can make the demand. We don't know if the governor may try to do something. At UNC, our chancellor asked, and the governor said, go ahead. That just scared the shit out of her. And she said, oh, I didn't really expect you to say yes. But hopefully you get better leadership out of that than that in
Thank you.
Okay, let me ask a process question. We were trying to keep it to 3 minutes. Do you want to let it go on and then not get to everybody, or do you want to stop it in 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
That's my rule.
Right.
Okay.
Pull the number out
I'm
for
gonna do the timer thing. So,
41.
I knew that would happen. But in light of the revelation that has been brought to us, the significance of the statues that I just rode by because I live here as a result of marrying someone from this area, but it wasn't my choice to live here. So now I'm being educated, and I feel that there has been a chasm in the educational process. We have so many uneducated young people, and they are falling victim to this thing or this current movement with lack of knowledge and lack of understanding. And I'm concerned, how can we embrace these young people so that they will not be misled or misguided in the process, but that they will be included to the point that we can raise above and move beyond this moment in time, because this is a moment in time, and this is not eternity. And we want to go forward and not backwards.
I have 7 children, 14 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. And I've tried to raise them pretty good on what the accurate history is of the South. But I think we're in a great teaching moment right now. Charles, that's one of the good things that came out of Charles. But we're having this thing here, probably wouldn't have happened. My position as a parent, and I also taught 6th grade for many years and taught teachers at college for many years. My position is, I tell young people come to me, what should we do? Should we go try to topple Silent Sam? That's what I lived in Chapel Hill for many years. And I said, I will be there with you, and I'll represent you, get you out of jail. And you'll read a book about Abraham Galloway. But I got to see you sit down and read the book before you go pull it down. I'll be there with you and help you pull it down. Now, in other words, I think we got to be tough with our kids right now. Say at some point we got to stop just reading something on the internet and say, oh, let's go and pull down this statue, or let's do that. Somebody's got to stop dumbing down Trump and this idiot woman he's got in charge of the Department of Education. Their whole strategy is to dumb down our kids, and we just sit back and let it happen.
I think Dr. Newkirk.
15 seconds.
Well, I think, what's got to happen right now is that we've got to use the same mediums to get information out about what's true and what's not true. We've got to use those things students, kids look at now. They're looking at Twitter and all. We've got to send out those same things. I remember here in Rocky Mount, I used to take kids from Northampton County up to Appomattox. And there are very few African-American kids that have ever been to Appomattox. And seeing what the Civil War actually ended, and Lisa Remsen understanding that is one of the things that I think we've got to do. And we've not done a good job as a people. When I say we, I'm talking about as African Americans. We have not taken our kids to these places.
30 seconds
over.
Can I add one thing to that? That is, this is a great teachable moment. That is true. but it's not enough to teach at this point. The stakes are too high. I know this sounds like hyperbole, but we have a nation-leading war on people of color going on in North Carolina. It's not a mystery. It's already underway. It's having strong successes. And we have the most powerful...
1 minute over.
The powerful war on poor people that has ever happened in modern times in the United States. That's happening now. It's underway. So it's got to be all hands on deck. We don't have time to teach.
Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Moderator, can we just say, let's limit our questions and comments to the 3 minutes, but then let the teaching continue. Okay? So because we don't want to.
That's 6 minutes,
That's
and it's already 8:24. I'm a timekeeper, so you don't mind running away.
But
Number 43.
But it's not you.
Number 43, I mean, you got it. Number 43, go ahead.
My question kind of piggybacks on the first gentleman, and it's more, I guess, in the process. So if, I don't understand the process now, if Rocky Mount, is it a ballot initiative? How would that request go forward? And what does it look like substantively?
City council.
Right. Well, and we have a manager here, I won't put her on the spot because this is a political issue.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that, and Councilman Knight is here too, I don't think we have any other city council persons here tonight. But whatever we do is deliberated in the public square. We have comment opportunities at every single council meeting that you can come, or any person can come and submit their request or perspective to ask the council to consider. We've already asked our city manager at our last meeting to begin to evaluate the options that we have and process. So it's something that I think the whole council, along with the mayor, would have to deliberate. But I say that the time is now to have those conversations. And so I believe, and you speak, Councilman, yourself too, but we want to hear from you. We want to hear from the public. This was the NAACP's opportunity to begin this conversation in our community with education and not with just emotion. So what we're hoping from this spur, this start, is that we're able to actually create real dynamic conversations in our community and start making some changes. Personally, Ruben Blackwell favors the statute coming down. That's what I favor. But it's going to take at least the majority of the council to make that move. And then, as our constitutional lawyers have advised us, there comes consequence with action. So we have to be prepared to deal with whatever that potential consequence is, and we don't know what it is. So that's something that we got to talk about and deal with. Councilman. Okay.
You break that time. 40. We haven't gotten out of the 40s yet. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first, this is housekeeping. Can you spell the author's last name that you referred to, Gillespie? So that we can,
Davidson, C-E, C-E again, L-S-K-I.
Okay, I was trying to
Celsius.
find the book.
We can send you a link if you just send us the
He was brought up right up to here.
Years of people down here.
And if you read the book, I think you get some ideas.
Honestly, my question was very similar to Nathan's, but I stated it a little bit differently, like Hollywood tends to glamorize African-American history, 12 Years a Slave, and some of the other movies that have come out. So, to the extent that Nathan was speaking about how do we educate not only people my age and older, but also the youth, and why it is that some of our more notable producers in Hollywood are not given the opportunity to really state the history as we know it.
very, very good point. I wonder, back in the late 60s and early 70s, in what we call the second Reconstruction period, when I was in jail and trying to get out of jail, there was a whole movement to create small booklets, what they call it, by the NEA, the National Education Association, and there was a group in Massachusetts. And all you have to do is go online and look up Black History for Children, or something like that. There's a whole lot of really good pamphlets that, you know, any teacher or with your own kids, you can sit down and you could have reading circles here. You could take the David Galloway book and try to make it into a children's book. I think David would come out here and help you do it. And Tim Tyson would do it in a minute. My brother, he said, history is real and it's out there, and we need to learn how to research and write it. That's what it is. There's been a revolution, as my brother will attest, in Black history since, 1970 or something like that. A revolution. There was not any Black history. There weren't very many Black history teachers. Think about that. That's why we're behind in this struggle. And I disagree with my brother Gene that it's not a question of things are falling apart now so we can't teach. We can do both. We got to teach our kids, bring up our kids, so this will never happen again. And number two, we've already got, as we keep pointing out, a Democratic governor. We're going to, the NAACP will be before the first Supreme Court of North Carolina has ever had 2 elected Black judges out of 7. That's 14 and 14. That's 29%. That's a pretty good percentage. And we're going to win when we make this argument about these racially gerrymandered districts on Monday morning. That's just 3 or 4 days away. So it's not quite as bad as it looks. We're going to win on this other thing before the...
I'm a teacher. I'm just saying teaching ain't enough.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, there are
Reverend Douglas was right.
Yes, sir. And there are a lot of good pieces out there. I think what's happening now, we're looking at the Hollywood version of everything, but there are a lot of good movies out there. Some of the older versions, if you look at 12 Years a Slave, there was an older movie that came out that actually followed the whole trail as it was. So you've got to actually go back and you have to be discerning as to what your children watch and what you watch, because there are a lot of good pieces out there. If you want to know more about Mississippi Burning, there are good documentaries out there that kind of tell you the whole piece and go beyond the Hollywood fictionalized version that you get. So there are good pieces out there, but I mean, we don't see them on TV because they don't catch the eye of the popular sales and people want, but they're out there. You have to pick them up and go through and get those pieces.
See, Ruby's got the ability to show movies right here. He can probably get in and into the room for $5 every Wednesday night.
We're going to do a film festival.
Next. Pull 140. 34.
Question was already answered.
Well, no. 38.
In response to what happened in Charlottesville.
Could you just give your name again?
Oh yeah, my name is Clark Coleman. That's me too. In response to what happened in Charlottesville, if a Klan or an equivalent white identity group comes and demonstrates in my town, what is the best immediate course of action to ensure everyone's safety?
Well, I'm going to turn to our city manager. So what's our protocol for anybody that protests or demonstrates with potentially violent outcomes?
Okay, well, police chief is here also, but people are required, of course, to have a permit. The chief reviews that request and makes a decision whether or not they will be permitted to demonstrate. In most cases, because of the First Amendment, they are allowed to do that. But the government's responsibility, of course, is to plan to ensure that the public is safe, regardless of what the position might be, but the public is safe. And So that will be our role, is to make sure that that demonstration moves through. We know that a lot of times people file permits and they say they're going to do this, and then we find that they're not. So the chief, I'm sure, would say that we rely on a lot of intelligence from other communities. We try to anticipate what is going to happen and try to make sure that it moves through peacefully and orderly as it can. But a lot of it is situational, wouldn't you say, Chief? And it just depends on what happens. But we do all that we can to ensure the safety of the public. And just so you know, we're already having conversations about that, just in case. And it's always good to be prepared and trying to respond or react to something when it comes to it. So, Chief, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
No, I think the major thing that you have to look at is the person. You can't look at the speech of the group. Because we have this beautiful document, and I love it, the U.S. Constitution and the First Amendment. So sometimes when we see different groups, if we don't like their speech, we want to put more restrictions on them, which we cannot do. No matter what the public's desire, we still have to enforce the Constitution. Every law enforcement officer in the country swears to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution first, then the state laws and the local laws. So that's my number one rule is, and the fear is, you got to remember, these different groups have been protesting in North Carolina long before Charlottesville. There have been marches in Charlotte, in North Carolina, Klan marches and other different groups, different speech that we do, that we like or don't like, for decades. Even before Charlottesville, you have to remember, if you read various newspapers around the state, those marches and demonstrations have been going on. So it's not like Charlottesville is going to start the marches. They've never stopped. We have to remember that. So what we would look at is, first of all, their right to speak. Now, whether you're talking about the alternative right and alternative left, no offense, those groups that we're talking about, for the most part, whether we like their speech or not, there has been no violence. There were marches prior to Charlottesville up in the Burlington area this year, just a couple months ago. I think most of you know that. Those marches didn't cause any violence. I think the event in Charlottesville were two opposing groups that caused the violence. So we can't just look at it and say, well, this group is going to bring violence. That would be unfair to the group. Because if you remember, and most of this audience is African American, just a few months ago, most of us would have supported someone from the Black Lives Matter movement coming. But it would have caused fear in another part of our population. And I would have made the same statement. We cannot, for people who don't like what they had to say, so we can't put restrictions on them because you don't like their speech. They all have the opportunity to speak and have voice. That's why I love America. That's why I love the U.S. Constitution, and that's why I would give my life to finish it. And I'm proud to do that, and any one of my officers would do that. So the answer to your question is, they have a right to speak. What we would do if there was an opposing group, try to figure out how do we keep those two groups separate. Now the difficulty is, if you watch the pictures in Charlottesville, if you watch all the pictures, you couldn't tell who was who. It's just like two white men hitting on each other. So if you had two opposing groups come to town, you wouldn't know how to differentiate. It's not like everybody wears white and everybody wears blue, everybody wears green and yellow. So that's the difficulty they had in Charlottesville, and that's the difficulty you have in most communities. How do you align two opposing groups? Because the First Amendment allows me as the chief to regulate time, place, and manner. That's it. You really can't tell a group, no, I can regulate the time, the place, and even that's if you remember, Charlottesville wanted to be in one place.
30 seconds.
But the ACLU said, no, you can't tell them that. So those are precedents. When you have decisions like that by federal courts, they establish precedents for one reason. Virginia is in the same Court of Appeals circuit as North Carolina. So if the Court of Appeals rules anywhere on the Eastern Seaboard, it's applicable to me. So I would have to study all of that in my legal advisors. But in ultimate, we're looking at peace and safety for our public, not the voice, not judging the voice.
Just, what specific plans are in place to prevent such escalation other than broadly separating?
Plans are not a public record. No group, no agency from the U.S. military, state, local, law, if we told you our plan, it would be useless. It would have no value at that point. If you put a plan out publicly, it has no value because any group can counter your plan.
30 seconds over. 33.
So I can just give 30 seconds.
Make one quick comment on Charlottesville, Chief. I love the first million, got me out of jail. But I think if you were to talk to the chief up there and the people who worked their permit, the ACLU and this right-wing group they had to win in, they would tell you immediately that the local guy who applied for the permit, the local white guy, Trump supporter, went in and asked for the permit, didn't tell them that all these fascists from California were coming, and they had recruited 400 or 500 people coming from all across the country who were young Trump people that they keeping their emails and tell them, and they raised money for them to come to Charlotte, and they taught them how to go to the hardware stores and buy those torches that we saw up here. None of that was when the ACLU lawyer got up on Thursday night and said to the judge, "Oh, here's my client, you know, the young guy from Charlottesville," and he acted like there was a bunch of people from Charlottesville coming. So the First Amendment does not cover lying about what you're doing, what you're going to do. So let's be very careful about saying that, like Trump does, both sides were equal. They weren't equal, that's number one. And I realized some of what they call Antifa, which means anti-fascist coalition. That is a national kind of very rough coalition of people who are willing to go out and try to protect black people and people in churches and everything from this group. You know, they use any thing they can use. I don't agree with that. I mean, Reverend Barber, we take a very strong position about nonviolence and be certain that we have enough forces there to outnumber them with the cops. You know, we work directly with the cops on how to isolate them. If you watch this over in Moral Monday, that's what we get every day Monday.
2 minutes and 45 seconds over. Number 33. 33. 35.
Captain Harris, I really had another question, but I want to ask this one. Are you allowed to disarm protesters or marchers? Can you require that they not bear arms?
I just can't answer your question. In North Carolina, we're right in the state, and it depends on the property and the situation.
So, any from the lawyer's perspective?
My view is all this comes from a decision called Skokie versus town of Skokie versus Nazi party in Skokie, Illinois. It went up to the Supreme Court. Nobody carried guns in that thing. All of this recent Supreme Court findings on the Second Amendment were not in place when Skokie was decided, which is still what they teach the cops, the chief of police and everything. So I've been agitating within the liberal and progressive legal community that we need to challenge Skokie. Skokie is not good law. And I heard the chief up there say, well, we have to, they had the Second Amendment right, and we were trying to balance all this stuff like that. I think if that case went back to the Supreme Court, Gene teaches this. I think it's a brand new situation when the Supreme Court has decided malicious mean personal people
Well,
that take
yeah,
guns.
not only that, I mean, you cannot have a system of free expression if some group is allowed to arm themselves with AK-47 and march along designed just to scare the shit out of you and make sure that you don't exercise your rights of expression. So we've made our Supreme Court's made some very strong mistakes about the Second Amendment, I think, and about its relationship to rights of assembly and the like, but that cannot be the rule. All you gotta do is look at that. You are gonna have any right to assemble or protest. If you've got a group of adversaries who's gonna get 100 people with AK-47s and march beside you. You can't have universities engaged in intellectual inquiry if people can come sit in your classroom packing a machine gun. So we've made some mistakes on this front.
Yes.
I will tell you this, I do know this, in 10 years, we're not gonna have any United States Supreme Court law which says, yeah, you can dress up like you're the third militia and march down the road and scare everybody from exercising their First Amendment right.
Justice,
Exactly what's been
justice is slow and it's sometimes stupid, but it's not that slow.
Next question? No, next question.
Well, Dr. Newkirk, can you, maybe this is a bit ambitious, can you help me to correlate toppling the statute now to addressing police brutality and murder toward African Americans?
Well, here's what I want to say, and I didn't say it when I did the opening. When people talk about protecting their heritage and their history, and this whole piece about history, North Carolina has done a very poor job of telling its history, especially when we talk about the history of, I want to say, the folks who are saying they're losing their history. Because first of all, there were 4 or 5 white North Carolinians who were generals in the Union Army. One was the commander of the Iron Brigade. There were several, North Carolina was a divided state, you do know, that over in the western part of the state, they did not want to secede from the Union. So there were a lot of Union regiments that were raised over in the western part of the state, over in the coastal zones of the state. But none of those groups are remembered in any of these statutes. None of those groups have any statutes anywhere in the state. So what I keep saying, this whole piece, it's never been about heritage and remembering our heritage. It was all about this whole piece of the lost cause, remembering the lost cause, and the imposition of what I want to call white supremacy. That's what these statutes are put up for. So when we talk about toppling those statutes, we'll go back to your main point. I see it as one of those things that should take place now. Now is the time to move on this whole piece. It should be immediate because those statutes never had the real basis in anybody's history.
I got 4 more, so we're gonna do all these today. All right. 44.
That's me.
Go ahead.
Linwood Goodies. I want to make a comment first because I want to know if anybody else sees what I see in terms of a perfect storm of racial division going on now. We have the neo-Nazis openly marching in our streets. You have 45 supporters who feel disenfranchised and feel like they have been sadly mistreated, who are looking for a leader. And I think they're going to actually dump 45 pretty soon because he's not going to get them jobs. When he does that, they're going to turn to somebody else. So it looks like a perfect storm, man. It also reminds you very much of Nazi Germany. They had that same perfect storm. And they chose somebody like this. That's the comment I want to make, and I was just curious as to whether or not anybody else see that happen. And that brings a sense of urgency to me that we do have to do something. And the other thing I want to ask is, why did Abraham Lincoln decide not to prosecute the Confederacy? This should have been something after that war like the Newkirk trials. And people should have been found guilty of treason. Okay, now treason, I believe, is a felony offense which has no statute of limitations. Is that right, Chief? Can they still be prosecuted? I mean, the Confederacy ought to be outlawed completely. Can they?
I can take the second part of your question. You know, the Confederacy, Abraham Lincoln didn't live very long. As Vice President, however, was a Tennessean, Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Johnson already had sympathies with a lot of the plantation owners. Radical Republicans impeached him, as you know. Now, here's the issue. The United States ran out of steam when we talked about racial equality in the mid-1870s. When you start looking at radical Republicans, that people tired of this whole thing. Think about this war. A war when you have more losses than any time in American history. And all of this resources that have been spent in this war, you know, historians often don't talk about that. But when you look at how much money was spent, the resources on this small group of people, 4 million people, that's the basis of this whole argument. Everybody wanted to get back to normal. Now, here's the thing that I found to be amazing. You know, you had this whole road to racial equality started, you know, the radical Republicans implemented legislation. They never went so far as to go beyond it, because you had to remember this was before we had mechanization. So you needed laborers on those farms and those plantations. They wanted people to get back to normalcy, to make the South productive. And so there was not the willpower to move forward. And what you saw was that it was a half-done job, as you said. Now, there were several opportunities to actually move forward throughout American history. And every time we got to those points in history, you know, it was a very gradual process until we got the Civil Rights Movement when it began to open doors up in the 1940s, always in the mid-1960s. And I still think we're going through that process to finish this whole piece up 100 and some odd years later. And that's where we are right now. I think it's because of those particular changes in America and where we were at the time when the legislation was passed. Because you could imagine this, and this is something kind of hard to kind of contemplate, and I find it hard. You had 3 million enslaved people, and many of them were walking off plantations, and the South was in ruin. Think about it. You had 100,000 white Southern men who were dead. You had slaves moving from plantation, former slaves moving from plantation to plantation, and the economy was wrecked. So you had to try to get it back together. The only way was trying to let the Southerners impose so they could keep people on the plantations. That's not a good answer, but that's what was happening at that particular place in time. So I just say now we've got to push even harder and move this whole piece. Now, as far as this thing about the fear of racism and neo-Nazis and Nazis and Hitler growing, I don't think that we're seeing anything different than what we saw in the 1920s. At the end of World War I, there were riots all across the U.S. Race riots, major riots, because a lot of black soldiers had gone to France and came back and seen things were different. They came back to America, many of race riots. There were some gradual changes at the end of World War I, the same kind of stuff. And then we get into the Civil Rights Movement. So what I believe you're seeing one of those transitional periods that happen in America every 20 years. This is one of those 20-year transitional periods. What I do believe is that we will see this thing peak out, but we'll see some changes for the good on the end of this piece.
On the first part, there's no understating the danger of this guy being the White House. It's impossible to understate. But let me think about this, the situation we're in. You remember the Comey hearings? All right, so the FBI sits down there in front of everybody. They asked him, why did you keep such complicated and detailed notes when you met with Donald Trump and you didn't when you met with Barack Obama or George Bush? And he said, well, because I thought he would lie. Now, nobody said, think about this. You're in that committee room. Nobody said a word. All the Republicans went, oh shit, I see what you mean. Who would ever think we would get to a position like that in the United States? Who would think that you'd have a meeting between Donald Trump and the head of Russia, Putin, and they would come out with different versions of what happened, and even the Republicans would say, well, Putin's probably right. He's a killer, he's a KGB man, he's a tyrant, and he lies a lot, but Trump lies every day, all day long, day in, day out, just out of habit, whether he needs to or not. We have a psychotic liar as President of the United States. It's too dangerous to countenance. And so it means we open ourselves up to a lot of perfect storms. And, you know, the truth is, as a people, we've got to get this guy out of there.
I just want to say a word on your Nuremberg idea. But there's nothing stopping the Nash County NAACP and many other people, if you were to take it to Rev. Barber, I know he would agree with it, to hold a Nuremberg trial here in Rocky Mountain. You could invite the United Nations Commission on Human Rights that Eleanor Roosevelt set up in 1947, right after the war, that did the Durban Commission in South Africa on racism about 10 years ago. Rev. Barber met with the commissioner 2 weeks ago. They are just negotiating now on how to do an international look at what's happening in North Carolina because of the catch-22s that we got going here. And also remember Patricia Timmons Goodson from Fayetteville, who was on our Supreme Court. Obama appointed her to be on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. She could be invited to come here and begin the whole hearings, and which are equivalent to the Nuremberg hearings, if you will. That we are locked up down here. We can register people vote. We can win. We got Mike Morgan won by 300,000 votes as the Supreme Court Justice, and we are losing every day over in the General Assembly. Those are facts that most sane people understand that there's something wrong in North Carolina. Everywhere Rev. Barber goes, everybody knows he's from North Carolina. You all are screwed down there. That's the way people think of North Carolina now. We're not taking advantage of this national reputation Rev. Barber and others have helped build by doing things in North Carolina. We did the other day. We flooded these little sham hearings they had. We need to set up a real hearing with real solid people coming and listening and developing a record on what this all-white caucus that Gene was talking about is doing to our people, black people and black and white fusion people. We need to do it now. That's a direct quote from Rev. Barber.
Nehemiah Smith, I was listening to Dr. Newkirk when you used the word trade. And I think one thing that we don't understand or that's not understood is that these people were not fighting, the South wasn't fighting against a foreign country. They were fighting against the United States of America. That's right. And we talk about monuments, they need to be removed. I wholeheartedly agree, all of them need to be taken down. We don't erect monuments to traitors. But not only that, all vestiges of, you can't remove them history, we'll teach the history, but we don't need to be reminded of it every day. They need to take down not only these statues, they need to take down the names of these schools that are named after these Confederate generals, like Robert E. Lee High School. You have black kids that have to sit in a school named for a Confederate general that was committed to keeping their ancestors in slavery. But not only that, in North Carolina, right. We don't even understand our own history in North Carolina and see what we have done to perpetuate this. We have all of these Confederate monuments in North Carolina. We bring down the one in Durham, they take down the one in Duke. But when are we going to take the name off of Fort Bragg? Braxton Bragg was a Confederate general. He graduated from the West Point in 1837.
He was also terrible.
And he was one of the meanest jokers that you ever wanted to meet. He would kill people for sport. Then you look at Fort Lee. He graduates in 1829. We have 10. We have the American flag flies over 10 facilities, military facilities that are named for Confederate generals. Imagine that. Fort Polk, Fort Lee, Fort Hood, Camp Beauregard. All of these are named for Confederate generals. And so America is double-minded. And we know what the word says about double-minded people. They're unstable in all their ways. And so if we're going to go after the monuments, go after it all. Take all of it away. Because these people were traitors. And then even after the war was over, you had Lee who said he wouldn't want to have any monuments built because he believed that it would continue to cause the division between the people in the country. He wanted that to go away. So, you know, we have a complicated history, and we need to deal with it all. Like you said, it's about education. Attorney McSurely said it's about education. We have to educate our children, and if they're not getting it in school, you better get it and teach it to them yourself.
I think what you got is you really have to go to now is that you look at, in the school's history has been de-emphasized.
Yes.
And revisionist history has been mainstream across North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this revisionist history about this glorious cause that's been put out. And that's been taught in schools. Very limited about Civil War and its impact. And so history, right now, is what we need to have this whole protest about emphasizing history from day one through schools. Because it has a real big impact in this state and in the South and throughout this country. And what's happening now, we look at our students. I think they get history in the 9th grade in North Carolina.
Right.
Social studies in the 9th grade. And then you might have something in the 11th grade, and that's it.
Right.
And so without that, you get a basic education. So if you look at a lot of these protesters out there now, they get a basic history education. It is very easy to sway the mind when you don't have good information to begin with.
It is 8 o'clock, but we have 2 more questions. I think we want to try to let those people talk. 42.
My name is Kim Koo, and I live in Rocky Mountain. I just want to make one observation, which I think, which I feel people have missed, right? It seems like every 50 years we're starting the same struggle. The system changes and mutates, but it's still the same oppression. Okay, and I submit to you, no disrespect to Jean Nichol, but you say something about perfect storm. I think it's more than perfect storm. I see this that there's a real political economic crisis in this system. And unless we take down the power, the seats of power, and change it so it doesn't happen again, we're going to be fighting this fight every 50 years. And we can't afford to do this anymore. Because right now we are in an environmental crisis, and environmental crisis as well. And we're not talking about just fighting fights among people. We're talking about the earth itself is dying, right? So I'm just going to submit to you that unless you want to fight for another 50 years, the same fight in a different form, you really got to think, really got to think about changing seats of power and who exactly holds power and how you need to change it. And everybody's going to be involved in it, particularly people of color and people who are marginalized, oppressed, super exploited.
The last one, 32.
Anyone else? Okay. The issue's focus. We're all over the map. By the way, all the bases are in the South for a reason. It was all by design to keep control and put government places in that place. The issue is, for us, is focus is because between 1860 and 1865, that's the second period. That's where the attention ought to be. We want to keep that attention there because the detractors use slavery. So that's what they drag in Jefferson and Washington. That was a legal but abomination period. The other contrast that we ought to make, I think we ought to make, is the fact that during the Revolutionary War, Charleston was a loyalist city. There were 2 great generals that fought there, called Tarleton and Cornwallis. There are no monuments there. Great generals, loyalist place. They don't have any of that in there because one is it offends the population. And these statutes offend the population. And we want to stay focused because all the other noise gets us distracted or gets us distracted, and they turn into politics, they turn everything else. It's about our kids and it's about our communities.
You got a number over here, 37.
39.
37. Whatever.
37, let's go.
Thank you very much. I live in Goldsboro, North Carolina, Wayne County, which is the home of Governor Charles B. Aycock. And we have been fighting in our branch to get the name of the high school, Charles B. Aycock, taken off. This has been very motivational. Here this afternoon, I think a couple of years ago, when we started our fight, Dr. Jean Nichol gave me some writings and some information. And I just wanted to stand and say that I agree with the gentleman and the comments that Dr. Newkirk made. We should do it all. And we will get that name of Charles B. Aycock off in that high school. We will make sure that our school board does not demand that every third grade student that goes to school in Wayne County have to go out, spend the day at his house. Ooh, it is disgusting. And it's just time out for it. And we will be working to make sure that
Did I miss anyone else? Go ahead. Come on.
No, I'm on phone board.
You sure?
Yes.
No, I'm not gonna lie to you, then go ahead.
It's finished.
That's the best way to get out of it.
Can I get one quick one in?
I'll give you one quick one if you can hold it totally to 3 minutes.
Oh, that's that.
Okay.
Where is Apple?
Alabama.
Yes, sir.
It's in Virginia, just west of Blacksburg, Virginia, in the area, west of Blacksburg, and not far from Lynchburg.
It's on 301, man.
Are there any more questions?
Yes. My name is Evelyn Shaw Wilson. I'm chair of our Board of Education in Edgecombe County. I am excited that we're talking about this. School will open Monday. Believe me, someone in the school will bring up this topic. Are we prepared to address it? Absolutely not.
Thank you. Before our president comes up, I just want to ask that you appreciate our guests.
Oh, yeah.
And also, before our president dismisses us, I'd just like us to remember that, interestingly enough, for all the people who were of color who died, and other people who fought along with them who died, these 3 people lost their lives. And because of their tragedy, we're able to begin having a conversation that I think is going to change our nation. So if you would please just for a moment, and we give honor to their memory, 2 police officers who died in the helicopter crash, and Ms. Heyer, who was mauled down by the bad man. And we also remember every person that's lost their life in an unjust manner, the hands of people who rather than hate. Thank you. Councilman Knight. President Knight.
I have a podium there, so I won't preach.
How the people writing out? Like, I know you're the president of NAACP and all your how the people writing out responding to the monument? Let's tell us where they're at and where they stand in the city. And then tell us how the people responding. What kind of feedback have you heard?
We have mixed emotions. We were here in Tinsley to come and ask the council to remove the statue here located on Battle Park premises, which is a city hall. It was donated to the city between 1970 and 1973. We have some that requesting us to have it removed, and then we have others that saying that it's a part of their history, it's a part of their culture. And we know that looking at the history of the Confederacy, that it was to build monuments for traitors, succeeded against the United States, to enslave. And so we don't want that. We don't want to be very demeaning, and we should not have to succumb to that every day, and to pass by that and see that memorial of what it represents. So I think that it's a discussion that we need to have locally to have it removed.
Tell us what you think about the turnout of the event tonight.
I think the event was really good. We had a very real dialogue about history, the state law, and interpretation of the law, about, you know, the future of this country and the leadership of this country. So I think we walked away tonight with a great wealth of knowledge from these three great people. And I think that we need to have more informative meetings such as this.
Who put together the panelists and the agenda for this event? Tell us, who put it together and briefly tell us why?
Well, it's the local branch, Rocky Mountain NAACP, Executive Committee. Brother Vann is one of the media specialists that we have that documents the history all across the state, and Ruben Blackwell and Clara Knight, and the executive board members supported this. So we put this panel together, invited distinguished guests, and we know them across the state of North Carolina because we participate in the North Carolina State NAACP. So they're not strangers to us. We're just resources that we have that we can call upon. Like Mr. Dancer said, we never had enough meetings like this. We need to have more meetings like this to educate people, so people can know their history so they won't repeat their history.
Wonderful. Anything I didn't ask you want to say?
No. This event was important tonight because people said, why now? Now is not the time. We should wait. Women all across this country, we have young people, Black Lives Matter, that are really begin to see, learn their history, and begin to stand up and speak volumes to the injustice in this country. And I think we should join in with young people and help them through this turbulent times that we're having. You know, people said, you know, we're not still fighting the Civil War, the Civil Rights movement. The Civil Rights movement is over. We're post-racial now, and that's not true because soon after President Obama left, this country, well, some people in this country, stole the election and elected Donald Trump, and we